Today I had the opportunity to sit down with Taylor's grandparents, Wendell and Vivian Anderson. We talked about their lives, how they met, their family, and faith. I hope you enjoy all they have to say. So I first want to talk about, we'll start with you, Vivian. Tell us about your childhood, where you were born, your hometown, how many siblings, that kind of stuff. And then also, what was life like for you before you met Wendell? How about that?
A lot better.
So what was your life like, Grammy?
Where were you born?
I was born in Esterville, Iowa, in 1932.
How many siblings did you have?
I had 4 siblings.
And then what were you in that order from oldest to
I was
youngest?
the oldest, and probably they think the bossiest.
Yeah.
And Margaret was second, Doris was third, Laura was fourth, and Marshall was the youngest. One brother.
And then what did your parents do?
Oh, farmed when I was younger. And then my dad we moved to Texas when I was young. And I think I was in a different school up to 7th grade about every year.
Oh, yeah.
Different farm when I was younger. And then was in Texas, came back to Esterville to a farm. Then my dad worked in Omaha with the big buses, Greyhound buses,
Sure.
and like that. And then we came back to Spencer, and about junior high age, 7th grade. And I went, my mind forgets sometimes. I was so many different ones. But I went out, then we moved to a farm south of Spencer, and I went to a little rural school there. And then I moved into Spencer and finished up my high school years, junior and high school both, I guess, in Spencer.
Being the oldest kid, did you have extra responsibilities around the house? Were you kind of the second mom?
Probably in some ways. My mom had a lot of care because my sister Laura was...
Tell them a little bit about Laura.
I had a sister younger than Doris and older than my brother, and I think she got polio at one point when there was a bad polio epidemic around. And whether she got injured before that or not, she seemed to develop, like, I remember she'd set up and play and everything till about probably 3 years old. And then she got sick, and then she never learned to walk or talk. And then at one point she had this polio, and her legs and arms drew up, and then got the one leg and arm. The doctor said, well, all he could recommend was massage. And so my mom worked hard at that. She had to feed her, and we had her at home until she was about almost 11 years old, or was 11. And then they tried once to put her in a home, but they could see she was going downhill, so they took her back home. That was about when she was several years old. And we had her till 11 or a little past, and then they put her in a home, but a short time after she was there, she passed away. So, anyway.
How much older were you than her?
Oh boy. I think she was born in 37.
And you were born in what?
32, so
you would have been 5 years older than her.
yeah,
five
or
or
six, probably.
Yeah.
And I would help feed her. Mom would set her in the high chair, but I don't know as much help, at that age. But sometimes she would ask me if I would feed her and like that. But it was quite a care for my mom, and my mom didn't drive. She tried a little bit, but she didn't drive, so we were she was tied down. She wasn't like today when you take off and take the kids and go to town and shop. She had to. They went. My dad and mom went together. They would shop. One would watch her, and different day and age too.
Sure, sure.
But then your mother, because of probably this, became a, what do you call it, teacher?
Yes, she was a teacher.
Yeah, but
Original
what kind?
elementary.
Was she like a special ed teacher?
Special
No.
ed, yeah.
Well,
special
she
ed.
did that, but she also taught in rural schools before she was married, and then after she was married, she didn't teach until I can't remember when she started.
About 50, wasn't she?
She taught in the rural school north of Spencer, out there by Krenz.
She went to college at Forest City, was it?
Buena Vista.
Oh, she went to BV.
Uh-huh.
I
You know
thought
that,
she-
Buena Vista.
Yeah, I thought she did something over that way.
She taught over there.
Oh, she
one
taught
of the
over
schools over there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she went to a very good college.
Very prestigious, yeah.
Yes.
What is your heritage? Where are your parents from?
Well, I think English, I should say. Of course, they came over because the great grandparents came over a long time ago. Someplace I have some great grandparent things around, I guess. But
You also had some Native American.
well, I thought so.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always heard we had Indian background. And then when Barry had his blood, something that didn't show any.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I went and looked up in the genealogy book, and the man that was related to us had married an Indian girl, but there was no children
Mm.
listed. So I'm thinking maybe he could have been related on the Elkin side, it would have been, and been related to this man, but they didn't have any family. So probably the family was before with these. I think he probably had been married because he married the Indian girl later.
All right, now, Wendell, when and where were you born?
Out on the farm.
Just down here?
Yep.
When was that?
Well, it was back in the 1700s.
I didn't know you were that old. How many siblings do you have?
Oh, I
And
got
then what were your order?
3. There were 3 of us boys and 3 sisters. So I was second to the oldest one. And my brother Ron was a missionary to the Belgian Congo. And he picked up some bug over there that ruined his liver. So he's been gone quite a while now. But yeah.
What's your earliest memory working on the farm? And maybe something that that's a little different than how you do it today.
Well, we milked cows by hand, and then I helped feed the hogs. We didn't use feeders like they do now. We just hauled out ear corn for them. And,
Put it in a trough. Put the swill in a trough.
my grandpa did that, but we never did.
Oh,
Uh,
my dad did it.
A little bit different picking corn.
oh yeah, picked corn by hand,
Wow.
and well, that went through the Second World War. While I was in school, it was over in the fall of '45. And I didn't graduate till spring of '46. But in '44, we got all the boys got 2 weeks off from school to go help either their family or somebody else's family pick corn by hand.
Oh, wow.
And I know you'd mentioned once that you and Ronald would pick corn by hand, but Grandpa could pick corn
Oh yeah,
faster.
he'd get 50 or 60 bushel by himself in half a day.
That's crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's a lot of hand labor.
Oh, I'm sure.
I guess I wanted to ask, as you were talking about where you were born and grew up, you guys went through the Depression.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what was, because that's a lot different than today. What,
Oh,
what
yeah.
was that like for
Well,
you?
there wasn't any money left over. We'd come up to, on my side, we'd come up to the A&P grocery store, bring in your eggs, your cream, and then you buy the groceries from whatever they paid you. And
That was the same with my folks, pretty much too.
and they didn't, there was no frills. You just did, and everybody helped each other.
If you were lucky on a Saturday night when they shopped for groceries, you might get a nickel or a few pennies to spend for candy. And I remember when I went to school at Esterville, a lot of the kids went down. They'd have a little money and go to the little grocery store that was about a block and a half away and buy candy. And I went in one day and I says, could you put a penny on my folks' coffee so I can have some candy? He just, I think, gave me the candy.
That's a good story.
Yeah, we did everything by hand. Picked corn, shocked oats, hauled oats into the threshing machine, and run that through. Oats would come out one way, the straw would go out another. We'd pile it up, and then we had a lot of hay because you had horses. Then you would do lots of things by hand, and about 4 or 5 years, I hauled bundles into the threshing machine and all by myself, and that was, well, I started that when I was about 12 years old, and yep. Then your corn we'd pick by hand, and you'd have to take it in and run it through a corn sheller, and then you had silage for feeding your cattle, and just a lot of hand labor.
So much different from today,
Oh, yeah.
where I do chores early in the morning, but I know you said you had to milk the cows before you went to school.
Yep. Then we had a half-mile dirt road down to where we caught the bus, and in the wintertime, we never went down that road. My dad would hook a salt plow to the sled and plow both ways. So we went down through the field to go any place. Yep.
I would be out there when my dad a lot of times did chores. So was Margaret. And I don't remember about Doris. She was enough younger. But my dad would be milking the cows. Sometimes he'd let me milk. I wasn't as good at it. But when there were always cats around. And my dad a lot of times would squirt, and the cats would stand there to catch the milk too in their mouth.
Yep.
Is there anything more you want to talk about there? Because I want to talk about, I'm jumping to baseball.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Sounds good.
I brought
Is that-
this over to Barry because
Yeah, that's an oldie.
this,
So this
they
be
came over on the boat
the Mayflower.
Probably almost. Really,
This is Chas Anderson. Charles Anderson and Anna. This would be your grandma and grandpa, or your
my dad's side. Yeah.
Your grandma and grandpa.
Yeah.
and they got married in Sioux Rapids when they got here.
Oh,
On the 12th day of June, 1885.
wow.
Yeah.
And on my grandmother's side, they came from England, and their name was Davis.
Yeah.
And my mother's name was Olmsted.
All right, Wendell. So I've heard that you were okay at baseball and you were a decent pitcher.
Uh,
Am I wrong?
Probably.
Where did this love of baseball come from?
Well, where I went to school, we had a consolidated school in Gillett Grove, and I did a lot of pitching, and then later for town teams and things like that. I wasn't real great, but I loved the game. So,
Who back then? Who were you looking up to? Who you were idolizing for baseball?
Well, I don't know that really idolized anybody because we didn't. There was no TV.
Sure.
Very little radio even. You'd have an A, a B, and a C battery that would hooked up, and if anything didn't come through, well, then you had to wait till you could get another battery. And there was no newspapers, so it was pretty primitive.
Sure.
And yeah, well, we were just one game from going to state. When I was a senior, we went over. We had played Rock Valley and Hampton in the districts, and we beat both of them. So then with Everly, we were in the finals, and I pitched 2 days in a row, and this was the third day. So they didn't have time off like we do nowadays. But the superintendent, he was also the coach because it was during the Second World War. And he says, well, I don't think you should be pitching today because of it'd be hard on your arm. You haven't matured yet, you know. And so he let the first baseman pitch in, and he just threw it like batting practice. So they got in the third inning, they had 5 scores already. We didn't have any. So then he brought me in anyway, and we only got three scores. So Everly went to state because they beat us 5-3. But and I played quite a bit of basketball too, but I was just mediocre.
In baseball, what pitches did you throw?
Oh, fastball was the best one I had, and then I had a drop, and I had wasn't much of a curve, more of a swerve.
Sure.
Actually, but we won a lot of games. I'd say 95% of the games we played, we won.
And then did you have a chance to go play more once you were older?
Oh yeah, then I played for
You played town
several
ball.
town teams.
Yeah.
Gillett Grove, Webb, yeah. So, and pitching most of the time at that too. But I did also play shortstop. Yep.
I remember you said you and Dean got drafted to the war same time.
to the Korean War.
Korean War. And your mom struggled with that. And so you had collected some baseball cards at that time?
I'm not sure.
And trying to remember, seems like she struggled with you boys going, and so she cleaned your rooms out.
Well, I was older than Dean.
Yeah.
So got drafted for 2 years, and I went to Korea, and I was in engineer company under 8th Army. We were from, Seoul up to the front lines was about 30 miles, and we set our tents up about 15 miles north of Seoul. And then I was in charge of about 8 dump trucks and their drivers. And then we had anywhere from 6 to 10 Koreans that would, we had to clean out the ditches and build up the roads because of the rice paddies. But in this area was a no traffic zone because it was all what would you call it, war zone. So then we'd go up and distribute stuff. Of course, the rice paddies were not raising rice because there was no people in between. But they still had water in them, so you had to build the road up to take tanks and the big artillery up to the front and over on the west side of Korea, which is kind of like Florida almost. Just come down. West side was 1st Marine Division, and then the next one was the 2nd Army Division. The third one was 32nd Army Division, and then of course they'd come up and back and up and back, and you got over on the east side was the 101st Airborne Division, and so I went to school in Fort Leonard Wood for infantry training, 8 weeks. Then I went to school for 8 weeks for war training anyway. And then I went to school 5 weeks for carpenter school. That had to do with building and keeping the roads up and all that kind of stuff. Then went over to Japan and went in and up to Tokyo, because that's inland. And then they went 2 weeks to CBR school. That's chemical, biological, and radiological warfare. And then shipped over to South Korea, Busan, and then went on up on a train up to where we were, just short of the line. And then before I left, we built up a tent city for exchange of prisoners. And when I was the 2nd or 3rd day on the boat coming back, where they started exchanging prisoners, because I think they said if I wasn't going to be there, there's no need of killing each other. So, but I was one of the lucky ones. Come back all in one piece, and yeah, it was a learning experience. So we worked a lot with the Korean people. They were good, hard-working people, but they got run back and forth, killed a lot of them. And,
the ambulances.
Yeah.
Kill them, but
Yeah, sometimes when I was out on the road and there'd come an ambulance from the front lines, and don't know how many people was in there, but the blood would be running out the back door, so you knew it was pretty touch and go. Yeah.
And then did you have little Korean boys around sometimes?
Oh yeah. We had a houseboy in each tent. We lived in a tent, but when I was there during the first winter, all we had was one blanket that we carried in our knapsack. And so we slept in our clothes because it was pretty cold. And then just along about March, they came up with sleeping bags. So that was that was a well,
How long were you there?
well, most all of 52 and half of 53.
They gave him a lot of training.
I went back to Japan on R&R, which is recuperation and relaxation over a weekend once. But as I came down, when I was going down through Japan, I come down to Hiroshima and what's the other one?
Nagasaki.
Nagasaki. And on the train, and you look out across, and there was nothing for as far as you could see, maybe a part of a wall because of the atomic bombs. First one was atomic bomb, the second one was hydrogen bomb, and all the damage was tremendous.
I remember you said you had to do a lot of, I don't know what it was, night shift
Oh, yeah,
and weekend.
yeah. I didn't drink, so they had free beer every night. Once a week on Saturday night, they'd have whiskey mix, and I didn't drink, so I got guard duty just about every time that
He kept somebody on every corner of the.
oh yeah, but it was an experience, and we needed to be there.
The wall in Japan. Did you say you could see that from the atomic bomb, a body in it? Or not?
Oh yeah, there was a bridge that went just up above the railroad track, and you could see the image of a person that had caught that wave of damage, and it had imprinted it right on the concrete.
Oh, wow.
So then I got back home and didn't know what I wanted to do. My dad was renting a quarter section 3 miles away from us, and so they weren't getting along overly well with the owner, and so then he says, I'm not going to rent it next year to your dad, but if you want to, I'll rent it to you. So rented it there for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, 3 years, I guess. And he had a whole lot of sheep. And so I lambed out all these sheep all winter and would go back and forth from our place to this place that I was farming. Whenever the lambing season come in the spring, and I would have to, I'd try and go every 2 hours because if you dropped a lamb, if they had twins, they'd only take one. So you had to pin them up. And so it was, then the landlord got tired of me, I guess. And so he said he was going to rent it to somebody else. And so I was looking around for another place, and our neighbor just across the fence says, I want to sell my place, but right now I don't have a buyer, and I would rent it to you if you would agree to buy it within a certain length of time. So that's where it was, and that's where my son Barry is now. He built a new house. Our old house was getting pretty bad, and so we're still farming that place. 560 acres.
Did you guys know each other before Korea, or was that after?
A little bit before, but mostly after.
We never dated.
But you knew who each other were before.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you first met, and then how things kind of sped up after Korea?
Well,
All I really remember, we were one night there for 4-H, and I think Ron, his brother, and him were sitting at the end of the dining room table. They were there, and I knew them. I knew their sisters, probably better than them. And then he went on, and I went. We finished school, of course, and then he went to the service, and I did bookkeeping, and he came back, and then all I remember is he came into the office. I think he can ask me if I'd like to go out, but I don't remember the exact date. I didn't write it down.
Oh, that's okay.
And we went together almost 4 years before we got married.
How did you ask her to marry you?
it was a weak moment.
Do I have right for divorce on that?
I don't know. It just kind of evolved, I guess.
It was just kind of expected that you were gonna.
Yeah.
Do you remember where he asked you to marry him? Where were you at?
I think probably one night when we were at my house, possibly just ourselves, the two of us, we were talking before he left.
What? That's an interesting question. What would you and Dad do on a date? Would you spend time at home together at one of your houses, or did you go to town, or
No,
what did
we
you?
usually went to
Well,
movies or
she lived in town here in Spencer.
on
So,
up there on
Yeah.
East 10th.
yeah, we'd go to a movie once in a while or to a
Or
play.
the fair, or
Sure.
go with family gatherings.
Yeah.
And what else did we do? I don't know. Went to the lakes, I think, sometimes. Went
Yeah.
to the park. Go to family houses, visit.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, we double dated too with some of our friends. Ruth Mormon, Jake's gone now, and Bill and Shirley Rod here. I think we triple dated that one night.
So then I have to ask also. So you and your brother married Vivian and her sister. How did that all happen? Were they dating before? Did they date after? How did that all work out?
It was about the same time. My oldest brother married her cousin, and so then that kind of,
Her cousin
Huh?
wanted to be a missionary, and they
Yeah. so that kind of brought the two sides together.
she
and
was
then,
3 years older than
yeah.
I am.
And Dean and Margaret, they, which is her sister, got married, and then
She started dating Dean later.
Yeah.
I think, didn't you?
and then her younger sister was dating Wayne Salton, and he was a farmer also. And,
They went skating. We didn't know how to skate.
Yeah,
Margaret and Dean, I don't.
that's where my bad knees came from.
So then you guys eventually got married. What was your early marriage life like?
Busy.
Did she
Because
move? Did she move down on the farm with you then?
The farm, not now, not that farm, but the other one,
Oh,
which is a few miles away, that he did the sheep on.
You
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about you lived in a little tenant house, didn't you, to start with?
Oh, yeah.
And that's good.
Yeah.
And the house that almost got
you could,
damaged with the tornado was the
yeah,
one we
you could
lived in,
reach
the
from
little
one wall to the other one. Yeah.
And then there was a big house on there, and it was rented to a teacher and his wife. Well, then when they moved out, we moved in the big one, but we weren't there that long.
Yeah.
We got on this other farm, and
Yeah.
on now.
Yeah, and still a lot of hand labor, and I had 2 milk cows that milked twice a day, had two groups of feeding cattle. We had 2 silos, and so then, but most of that didn't have an unloader, so I'd have to get up in the silo, put it down into a wagon, then haul it out in a basket to feed the cattle, and then feral hogs, but we made it work. And then we started having a family, and
How long did it go from when you guys were married to your first kid?
We were married in 58. And Linda was born in 60, May 60.
So not too long.
year and a half, I guess.
So then, did you have a job, or did you just help out on the farm for those?
I worked for a little while after, but then when I was expecting, and I
You
worked
worked-
for the county superintendent's
Yeah.
office at that when
Yeah.
we got married. And
Yeah.
we, after that, I'm not going to say I haven't worked.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying being a stay-at-home mom or a farm
And,
farm wife isn't a work.
and I
hard work.
won't comment on that.
So all right, so now I want you to go into each one of your kids and start with the oldest and go to youngest when they were born, and then kind of like their personality or any hobbies that they had, and then if you have a good story about them that'd be good to share, maybe embarrass them a little bit too, would be something that you could share.
You started, I did.
Well, Linda was the oldest one, and she went to school at Gillett Grove Consolidated School, and then she went to Orange City, Northwestern,
Yep.
for music. But then somebody there decided that they didn't think she'd make a good music teacher. So then she went down to St. Luke's Hospital in Sioux City, where she got her nursing degree. And then nurses wasn't much of a demand right then. So she had to go to Texas to get a job. And she worked at St. Elizabeth?
Well, she worked 2 hospitals at times.
Yeah.
What was the first one? No, I don't think it was St. Elizabeth's.
Well, St. something.
She sort of even worked 2
Yeah,
hospitals
and
sometimes
then,
down there.
And so
But one, Beaumont, was it just Beaumont Hospital? I
Yeah.
think it was just the Beaumont,
Beaumont,
Hospital
Texas.
was her main job, and then she also worked extra hours at
Yeah.
St. Elizabeth, so she did double duty.
And then while she was there, some from her church she was going to, or somebody called us and said they thought she had some type of a problem. So we went down and got her. Vivian and Doris went down and brought her back up.
Well, she had some surgery down there.
Oh,
couple
yeah,
major surgeries.
Yeah, she was an ileostomy.
Yeah, when she was 12, that's one of the
Yeah,
things she
so
had. Her dad had ulcerative colitis, and I guess she inherited that a little bit because and they took her colon. So
Yeah.
that was sort of a sad thing. That was
Yeah.
one thing I didn't want to do, really.
But-
Almost backed out.
so
And the thing about that was that I thought, I am not signing her in for that at Mayo Clinic. I will not. Wendell's going to have to do it. Well, guess what? The cattle got out. I don't know whether you remember that or not, but the cattle was all over the neighborhood on a Sunday, and she had to be signed in up at Mayo's at 4 o'clock on Sunday for this surgery the next day. So I ended up going, and I signed her in, and I regret it sometimes.
Linda always, even when she was at Northwestern, she was very good at music.
Yeah.
Can play
Yeah.
the piano
well,
beautifully.
she directed the choir there.
And
Oh.
then as she was a
No,
nurse,
not
As
there.
a nurse, she did
No,
the
she
choir down at
Yeah.
St. Luke's.
At St. Luke's,
St.
she
Luke's.
directed the choir.
but
and,
she did very well in nursing as well.
Oh yeah,
She loves to study.
yeah,
Loves to study.
yeah.
So-
Well, then when she came back, she took different nursing jobs, and one doctor told Vivian that I never have to ask her when we're operating,
Yeah.
what knife or whatever
good
I need.
instrument to
She's
get.
already got it there, just waiting for me because she knows.
Said she knows it.
Yeah.
So,
That's a
well,
good nurse.
That was
So-
his doctor up at Spirit Lake. I can't think of his name now. He's still there. I think.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And then she, some way or another, or whether she overworked or what, we don't know, but she came up with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And so then she had a hard time keeping a job very long. And so now she's in a nursing home. Well, then Linda also, while she was working, she kept taking classes. She got her master's degree in nursing, and then she was starting to get her doctor's degree, and then she had a episode or something, and then they wouldn't want to hire her. Anyway, then the second one was Lori, and
What's the time in between Linda and Lori?
She was born in August
about a year,
1962.
probably a year and a half,
So 2 years, a little
2
more,
years
a
maybe.
little more than
Yeah.
2 years.
And she went to Northwestern over at Orange City, Iowa, and she was, well, I don't know what she took for sure, but she was in drama, a lot of plays and all that type of thing. Anyway,
Can't think what her degree was.
well,
I
anyway,
think it was something along the business part
yeah, then
too.
she got a degree, and she still, and she got married a fellow from California, and we went out there for the marriage, and then they finally,
They had Joshua.
Yeah.
And then later Caleb.
she's working 2 jobs over there now at Orange City.
Do you have any good stories of her when she was a kid? I want to ask this Barry too, see if he has an experience with her or not.
Yeah, you might remember more. She had different personality than Linda. You know, each kid has a different personality. Linda, the oldest, no brothers and sisters, and she had to be sort of overseer.
Sure.
You know, the
Yeah.
older one, I think, gets to
Mm-hmm.
watch. They played together good. They played together good with their cousins because they lived across.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
that other
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
One thing, I think it was Lori, though, that I can't remember. We had this picket fence, and the wood was old, of course. And as I recall, she used to climb around that fence. And I think one time she fell, and I think it was her that fell and got the wood splinter. It looked
Ooh.
like a monster of a wood splinter in the back, sort of her leg. And I think it was her that did that. I'm sure it wasn't Linda, because Linda wasn't as great at, she'd do it maybe, but she wasn't as great as climbing around that wood picket fence. You remember that?
Lori.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And one time I think I don't know whether she remembers it, but yeah, I'm sure it was her that fell on it and got a splinter in it that looked like a nail.
No,
I had to take it out, and I thought, oh my.
Did you talk that Lori almost wasn't here today? Wasn't she the one that got caught on the swing and got tangled up? And Tony Dodge, as he was driving out, the gas man, didn't he run over and she kind of slid off the slide slid off the swing and had the swing kind of around her neck?
I don't know.
I don't remember that, but
No.
could
Maybe
be.
you remember something,
Yeah.
or maybe he
Yeah.
told you.
Linda and Lori were both cheerleaders in school for sports, different sports teams.
Linda and Lori were kind of misguided at an early age, and they both ended up going to Northwestern College, and that's a sad part to our history. But
But it sounds like the saving grace came next.
And what is saving grace?
Then Barry came along and went to
He
Buena
was born
Vista.
in 66.
six.
went
So-
to Buena Vista and Storm Lake, Iowa, and played on a basketball scholarship there, and
We
and
lost one in between.
and and then later,
Oh, you lost.
Yeah.
You had a miscarriage.
Uh-huh.
and
And
then
it would have been a boy.
yeah,
Craig, is
and,
that right? It would have been. Was his name going to be Craig?
I don't know what it would have been.
Oh, I thought you had decided, but
anyway,
I don't know if we did or
he took
I
mostly
can't remember, Barry.
uh,
Maybe you remember better.
business, and I got a job in Chicago, and was there for a while. Then got transferred to Tennessee, and met
You
a
can
girl.
tell this.
Met a girl down there that he married, and then he decided that that really wasn't what he wanted to do, and so he come back and helped farm, and now he's doing the farming.
And I think he got a nice girl.
I think so
Yeah.
too. And his daughters are okay too.
Well, that's debatable.
Oh man. So I heard a story. There's two stories. One that Barry, right when Barry got to BV, and it sounded like he was coming home pretty often, and it sounded like that you kind of sat him down and said, "Hey, maybe you need to not do that so often." What was that like? What was it like for a dad to hear that your son maybe wasn't doing the best?
Weren't you doing the best?
I don't know.
well,
I know
I
why
was-
he came home.
well, yeah, I had a girlfriend at home too.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that part, but
Yeah, but I didn't like, at that time, I didn't like drinking. Didn't drink at all.
still don't drink anymore though. But
No. But they always liked to party. And so I would come home almost every weekend. And I remember when I was going to come home that one time, and I called and said, well, what are you guys doing this weekend? And I think I was talking to Mom, and she said, oh, probably not much. And I said, well, I'll probably come home. And she says, well, here, talk to your dad. And I remember Dad said, I think you need to stay there and decide whether you're going to go to college or whether you're going to come home. That was the first time that it was really hard for me to stay away. So, yeah. Do you remember that conversation, Grandpa?
Oh,
That was a long time ago.
faintly. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just know you like to come home to see your girlfriend.
Yeah, well, that didn't hurt either. So,
Yeah. But later on, Barry played 4 years of basketball at Buena Vista, but then he got awarded an All-American for his feats in basketball after a while, and it so in class 3 colleges, and so yep.
Yep.
Then we had a baby that she lost.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was before
Before
Barry.
Barry. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
And then the youngest one is Sonia. She went where to school? Culver, Stockton, Missouri, right on the
That was the farthest away kid.
yeah. That was right on the edge of the western edge of the Mississippi River, Canton, Missouri.
I think she.
That,
And
and you can tell them, this would be a great point to put in there, that you ruined my 3rd birthday.
Yeah, he has to share it with Sonny.
so there's
They
resentment
are-
there.
They are our twins.
3 years apart.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And kind of an interesting part, we were born on the same day, 3 years apart. Grandma's dad passed away on my birthday, Sonny and my birthday, wasn't it? February 18th.
I don't remember.
I believe so. I think
Could
that's
be.
but
See,
before we were born.
Sure.
I can't remember the year that he passed away. It was before we were born, but I believe it was.
I don't know whether I got any record of it written
Then
down.
Sonia graduated from Culver Stockton, got a job over in Des Moines, and
There was one sad memory I always think about Sonny. Should I
then
mention?
Yeah.
When she was going to Culver Stockton, and I think it was after her first year, I'm not sure exactly, but anyway, she had this real close girlfriend, and they were good friends. They'd visit at night and worked together real well. And this girl worked, well, it was summer vacation, and she had disappeared. And they couldn't, she had worked at a grocery store, I guess, and they found her car with the door open, I think it was, going home, and they finally found the girl's body out in the cornfield. And of course, somebody called Sonny, her parents or somebody, and told her about it. You know, they weren't finding her, and she knew it. And then when they did find her, somebody had sort of corralled her out in this country road, and they found her body in the cornfield. And Sonny, I remember her just going out in the yard, and I didn't know what she'd been told at that point. I knew but she's out there on the yard, head down.
Yeah.
It was a hard time.
Yeah, that
Yep.
yeah,
And so that was a sad experience for
Yeah.
Sonny.
she had worked in Des Moines at a couple of different jobs, and then
There was one that was it a book company? I can't remember
don't
exactly.
remember. Anyway,
She had good jobs down there.
yeah, one was at one of the hospitals, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think.
she worked at a hospital down there, and then she worked for the Farm Bureau for a little while.
Yeah.
Do you have any good stories about Sonny?
Yes. Barry and his cousin Brad would go out in the yard, and they would play football or baseball or softball back and forth, and they have Sonny in the middle trying.
And Rodney, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Rodney and Sonny. It was a good team. They were on one side,
Yeah.
and Sonny and Brad.
We kind of stacked the team, and she was the only one around, so she had to play.
You needed numbers.
We
Yeah,
did.
sure.
And playing football, Sonny took the brunt of a lot of blows. And I remember one time Brad asked, "Is she okay?"
Yeah.
And I kind of stood her up. I said, "Sure, she'll be fine. She'll be fine." Kind of
Just
dusted.
he drug her over and picked her up. They said, just stood her on her feet. Said, she's okay.
That's funny.
Brotherly love.
Mhm.
She was always up for stuff.
That's cool.
Do you have sisters?
I had an older sister and a younger brother. So I've kind of have that with my younger brother. I remember it was like, "Oh, you're fine." He'd be playing with us, and he would definitely be the youngest one playing. But he was pretty good. He was good to play with.
Anyway, Sonny is married to Brian Nash. He went to school at Simpson in southern Iowa, and they came back to Spencer.
They're
Yeah.
both accountants.
Yeah, both CPAs.
Mhm.
Yeah. Then she's working now at Buena Vista County Hospital, and he had a job at a fertilizer feed business over by Ruthven, Iowa, but then they got bought out. Now he's got a job at Rembrandt
Chicken farm.
Chicken, yeah, where they have millions of birds. And he's been at that now about 4 weeks, I guess. And so that's working out quite well.
Now that we've gone through all the kids, let's talk about grandkids. How many grandkids do you have? And if you can go through kind of like what you did for your own kids, if you have a funny memory of them.
How many do you have?
How many grandkids do you have?
How many grandkids do you have? Try six. Try six and almost another one we claim, I would say, sort of as a
Yeah, I
grand.
got Lori had Josh and Caleb.
Barry's got three.
That's Megan, Taylor, and Chris.
Uh-huh.
And then there's Juan, which can you explain who Juan is and who Guadi is?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's Abigail.
And then Abigail, yes.
We had a
exchange student.
exchange student that was in the same class as Lori in high school from Ecuador, and Quito, Ecuador. And so she stayed with us.
She's supposed to be there 6 months, but the other people, for various reasons, couldn't have her in the mid-year. So we got to keep her all year.
Yep.
And it was a different day and age than for her, too, because phone calling wasn't as easy then.
Sure.
And I remember the Christmas she was there. She went up face down and she was crying. Felt so sorry for her. And
very homesick, wasn't she?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And so now her parents, they're both gone, aren't they?
Yep.
So, and then she went back, and she had a good job. She went to school down here, too, down in
Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Yeah. And went back, and she had a good job down there with the bank. Still has it. And then, I don't know the story about it, but she had Juan.
Yeah.
And
She had Juan while he was here.
Yeah.
So
she was at school, I guess, but she had been back home. And so
she had Juan, and so he
well,
had
in fact, I got
dual.
a picture holding him because she called and she says, "Oh, Mom, I am hurting so bad." And she was in the hospital. And I said, "We'll be there." Well, by the time we got there, she had one.
Mhm.
So it's sort of, almost like a grandson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this would be good to put on here while it's recording. You can say how bad she picked on me when she was staying in our house.
Get that?
Oh, yeah, we've gotten this all, yeah.
So,
Anyway,
Uh,
so he came back up here then and lived with Sonny and Brian and went to school over at
Eskerville
Iowa
Community.
Lakes.
junior college and graduated from there. Wanted to be a pilot, and when he was home growing up, he had all kinds of this stuff in his room that he'd made up just like a pilot's cockpit. And so then, while he was over at Esterville, he took on a job of training future pilots. So he did that for a couple of years, and then he went to West Lafayette, Indiana, to Purdue University, and took more of that, and they got trained a lot of people, especially for the armed forces, and then he graduated from that and kept training future pilots, and
He just has so many hours to go now, and
Yeah.
he'll be able to work
He
for
got-
SkyWest.
SkyWest at Las Vegas, Nevada. So he'll be, as soon as he gets his hours in, he'll be a assistant pilot there. Yeah.
Do you have any?
Know whether to get it in Ecuador or here, so he's gonna be, I guess, here, won't he?
Yeah.
Do you have any good stories about of your other grandkids? I don't know, Barry, if you can think of any. I know I have one about Chris. There's rumor that he may have ran around the house with no clothes on one time when he was here. Is this true?
One time when we were watching,
I'm sure.
yeah, he ran around the house. Megan said he ran outside. Now maybe she saw more than I saw, but he wasn't concerned about the cold. But that was sort of contagious because I remember his dad going outside and the sisters locking the doors on him. And it was wintertime, I think, too.
They were always mean to me.
But you sort of ask for it. Anyway.
Remember, I'll go through my family. When we lived in Tennessee, Grandma and Grandpa would come down to see Megan, our first, and she had a favorite place that she always wanted Grandma and Grandpa to take her to.
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell.
Bell, Grandpa. Bell, Grandma.
That's funny. That's a good story.
Yeah. And I remember her in that apartment too. There's a picture here, I think, of her. And then she liked to sort of play. Well, Abigail did one time did too, but she liked to play with my rollers and stuff on my hair.
Yeah. All three of the kids played sports, but one that Grandpa probably enjoyed as much as anything was Taylor was a pitcher.
For softball. Yeah.
So
So you have to watch for that wild ball.
Oh yeah, I know.
a lot of memories with grandkids. Lori has a couple of boys.
Yeah.
So you can talk about them a little bit, and they were angels as well. So maybe you have a good story from
Not
one of
Joshua.
those two.
He was all over town. As soon as he was walked, he was gone.
Yep. So,
No, Joshua was selling cars for a used car dealer and selling a lot of cars. But he got tired of people coming back in and saying, well, this wasn't right, or you got to fix this. So anyway, now he just took a job at
Climbing these windmills.
wind turbines. Yep.
Yeah.
And has done very well. Sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He went to college at Shelton, junior college.
Yeah.
What was his degree? I can't remember the degrees all
I
these
don't
kids get. And Caleb, he graduated this past spring, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
down at Ames, and he's got his
Yeah.
degree in what kind of engineering?
Electrical engineering.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I remember him, and he was, well, I remember Josh, some of the things. We don't see them quite as often. But I remember when Caleb was just a little boy, I always think of this. He came out, he's probably about 3 or 4, and I guess he knew we were coming. He came out in the drive, and I remember him looking up at me with those big blue eyes at that time. They were just so blue, and he was so tickled to see Grandma and Grandpa. Oh, and a thing about Caleb that I remember too. He had a little bench and table with sort of a computer-like thing on, and I guess he could run it. Anyway, he was about 4 maybe, and he says, "Here, Grandma, you sit down. I'll show you. I'll show you." I got down there, and I don't think I was there hardly 30 seconds. "Grandma, get up. I'll show you."
when they would come over, Caleb wanted to play a board game.
Yeah.
What board game did he want to play?
Oh, what was it?
Rich Farmer, Poor Farmer, or Monopoly? He loved playing Monopoly.
Could be that.
Anyway, he just took a job now in Longmont, Colorado for electrical engineering. So sounds like things are going well. Yeah. His mother went out to see him a month ago.
All right.
Yep.
Last two. If you got something, go ahead.
No.
You sure?
Did you talk about Abigail already enough?
Well, do you think we could think of anything about Abigail?
As if you have any good Abigail stories, sure.
She's playing soccer, but she's Most of the time,
You have
she's
to
just
see
waving
it.
at the people sitting along the side.
Once in a while she runs with it, but then she,
That's funny.
or looking at you, or putting her thumb up.
Yeah, giving a thumbs up. But she loves when Grandma and Grandpa come to things. So, yeah,
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, she's loving. Everybody's her somebody to give a hug.
Oh, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
All right, my last two things I want to talk about. First one is about faith. You guys are both very strong in your faith. How did that start, and how has that changed now that you are where you are in life?
Oh,
Like, was it just something? Did it just happen? That's just what you did every Sunday. You'd go to church.
yeah. I went to a congregational church down in Greenville since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and then something blew up there, and we came up to Spencer and went to First Christian Church here in Spencer.
what year was that?
I don't remember, but
That's probably when I first.
anyway, we're still there, but I don't know. We're not. At least I'm not. Grandma's better than I am, but I'm not the best Christian in the world. But we got to be thankful for the sacrifices that were made for us, that we have a chance of forgiveness of our sins and a hope of eternal life. So that's kind of where I'm standing.
You have anything to add?
Well, I was taken to church when I was young. When I had my sister that couldn't walk and talk a lot of times. They saw that we got to Sunday school and stuff, but a lot of times my folks couldn't sit in church with us, so sometimes they still had a deep faith. And so I've grown up in it, and I just hope God has a place for me.
All right, the last thing I'm going to say. So you guys have been married 60 years, which that's a pretty big number. I'm sure there's been highs and lows. What is that advice? So Taylor and I, we're going to be 2 years here in June, and even Barry and Dana, I don't know how long, 20 something. How do you make it that long? What's the key there?
Give and take, and you'll probably feel like you're taking more than you give, maybe.
It's been a battle.
As he rolls his eyes.
No,
I said that wrong. Probably
We've
giving
worked.
more than you take.
we've worked pretty well together. I don't think I'm probably bossy, but I'm not feel that I'm any better than she is. But we each have our strong points and our weaker points. But it's you still have to work together and love each other. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Even have to love the bad things sometimes.
Yeah. You have life is just that way. There's ups and there's downs, and you have to take the downs till you build it back up again.
Sure.
I read something I wrote down from someplace the other day. If you have never had any adversity, keep on living.
Yeah. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing, you're not learning.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to Wendell and Vivian for taking the time to sit down with me. It was a great conversation, one I'll remember for quite a while.